Hello. Today we're unraveling a chilling murder mystery that shattered the calm of a seemingly peaceful place. Redwood Park, one of the largest parks in the H3 district of Los Angeles, nestled in the city's northern reaches. Famous for its breathtaking natural beauty, this park offers a sanctuary for locals escaping the grind of city life. But that tranquility was torn apart one icy January day. East of Redwood Park lies a quiet suburb of Oak Ridge Hills. In a parking lot there, a gruesome discovery plunged the area into terror. On a freezing Tuesday morning, a human shape, tightly wrapped in a blanket, was spotted on a barren strip beside the parking lot. As onlookers drew near, a horrifying scene unfolded, sending shivers down their spines. Police swarmed the site, peeling back the blanket to reveal a woman's body, her head mutilated, her remains scorched. DNA from the killer lingered on the fabric, tying the savage act to a name some in Los Angeles might still dread: Edward Hayes. A small, scruffy man with sparse hair, a blocky face, and two jutting front teeth, Edward Hayes had been accused 2 decades earlier of a spree of assaults on young women across the city. Convicted then acquitted, he'd been crowned a wronged hero by the press. Now, 20 years on, Edward Hayes was back under suspicion. Was he linked to this nightmarish crime? Could he be innocent again, or had the city's savior finally shown his true face? 2 decades ago, a wave of brutal crimes had gripped Los Angeles, radiating from its chaotic heart. The targets were young women in their 20s, attacked and incinerated. The prime suspect then was Edward Hayes, a petty crook with a history of theft and arson. He'd been seen lurking near crime scenes, but always slipped free, evidence too flimsy to hold him. Back to the parking lot case. Police identified the victim as Laura Mitchell, a 41-year-old from Dodge County, Kansas. Jobless and adrift, Laura had wandered to East Los Angeles, sleeping in Redwood Park. There, she crossed paths with Edward Hayes, a park custodian, and they started sharing a roof. His place sat close to the Oak Ridge Hills parking lot. Neighbors recalled him bringing a middle-aged woman home months back. Days before the killing, loud fights echoed from his house. Then she was gone. Years earlier, Edward had done 2 years for theft. After release, he settled in East Los Angeles. A search of his home turned up a blanket identical to the one at the scene. With evidence piling up, Edward Hayes became the top suspect. Who was this man, and why was he tied to a string of shocking crimes 20 years prior? Let's dig into his past. Edward Hayes was born in 1936 in Willow Bend, a dusty farming hamlet in Saline County, Kansas. His mother, a farmer, was widowed soon after marriage and raised 6 kids alone, each with a different father, while running a small shop. Edward's dad died before he was born, leaving him with 1 full sister and a handful of half-siblings. Her earnings couldn't stretch far enough for 6 mouths, sinking them into hardship. Edward despised school, turned to petty theft young, and floundered academically. In middle school, he managed a solid 13 in PE, but scraped 2s elsewhere. He ditched class constantly, 60 days out of 240, about 1 in 3, helping at home or hustling on the sly. He quit before finishing middle school. The family later relocated to Los Angeles, where Edward took odd jobs to get by. He worked briefly at a pinball joint, but quit within a month, hooked on gambling until his pockets ran dry. To feed it, he stole from neighborhoods until he was nabbed and jailed short-term. Out at 26, he soon landed behind bars again for break-ins. Instead of cleaning up, he turned to arson post-release, drifting between siblings' homes and piling up arrests, 14 total, 8 convictions, nearly 13 years locked up. He became a regular in police logs. In 1968, at 32, Edward finished another stint. Months later, a rash of murders jolted Los Angeles. That summer, in Santa Monica, near Lincoln Station, a 26-year-old office worker's burned, violated body turned up on a tennis court lawn. She'd choked to death after work, vanishing around 9 p.m. Her father reported her missing. The awful truth hit fast. A witness saw flames at dawn, hinting the killer torched the evidence. An anonymous call fingered Edward, just out and a known menace. Someone saw the victim alone at a diner near the station before a man joined her. They chatted, then left together. The guy, square-jawed, tan, messy-haired, in a gray polo, stocky like a laborer, fit Edward to a T, but with no hard proof, the case went cold. That year, he was jailed again for burglary, and while inside, the killings paused. Released in 1972, they flared up again. From 1973 to 1974, 9 similar cases struck Los Angeles, San Diego, and Sacramento. Most victims were young women. In January 1973, a 22-year-old office worker was slain in her sleep in Hollywood, her place set ablaze. Nothing was taken. Assault seemed the goal. 2 days prior, Edward was spotted nearby with a crowbar, but he walked since no crime had occurred yet. In February, a Long Beach fire killed a young man and an older woman, eerily alike. That summer, in Sacramento, 3 cases hit in a month. A 30-year-old housewife vanished. A 19-year-old co-op worker named Sarah Evans went missing after company bingo night, and a teacher was murdered near Elmwood Station. Her apartment torched, windows smashed. Edward's blood type, O, matched scene evidence, and his construction gigs gave him break-in know-how. He lived in East Los Angeles near Sacramento and was seen there pre-crimes, stealing TVs, jewelry, and books with over $500,000 total. Then Michael Grant, a construction worker, was found buried at a Sacramento site, followed by the missing housewife nearby, both within 500 meters of Elmwood Station. Michael had been strangled, body bruised, a footprint matching Edward's size. In July, a downtown LA restaurant fire killed 2 women, items stolen. 10 days later, in San Diego, a 22-year-old pharmacist was murdered via ladder entry. Blood type O again. A witness saw a man like Edward fleeing another East LA killing days later. From 1968 to 1974, 10 similar cases haunted the region, mirroring a city buckling under growth and unrest. Police shadowed Edward for years, but proof stayed elusive. A crowbar near Michael Grant's body placed him there, yet it wasn't enough. A month later, he was caught for burglary in Sacramento. Grilled, he confessed to killing Sarah Evans, saying he'd lured her from near the site, assaulted her, and strangled her with her coat's cord when she screamed. He buried her there. Police found her stuffed by a river, and the press went wild, branding Edward a human devil. But deeper digging showed 2 of the 10 cases tied to others. The downtown LA restaurant was a botched robbery, and the San Diego killing matched the victim's boyfriend's blood, A or AB, not Edward's O. 6 months after his arrest, Edward recanted, claiming police forced it out of him. Another big case, Thomas Reed, a roughneck with a record, echoed his, with a flip confession and biased claims from his outcast roots, sparking outrage. Reporters found Edward wasn't from a shunned group, yet cops had pushed his guilt hard. Doubt crept in, serial killer or fall guy. Trials stretched on. In 1979, Edward wrote a book about his life, showing a tender side, adoring his nieces and nephews, craving family. Readers saw a warm, misjudged man, not a beast. A support group rallied, sure of his innocence, fighting for his redemption. Blood evidence was shaky, burn scenes blurred results, and his confession was key. But 100 days after Sarah's body surfaced, her items appeared near the scene, despite prior searches. Talk of planted evidence in brutal substitute prison interrogations, police-run cells, bolstered his defense. In July 1986, Edward faced trial in Sacramento for Sarah's murder. After 2 months, he was convicted and got life. He appealed at once. The media still tied him to the spree, though charged for 1 death. His backers pushed back, demanding a retrial. In April 1991, the Los Angeles High Court reheard it. Prosecutors clung to his confession and items. The defense slammed the interrogation's harshness. Solitary, relentless pressure. Amid a post-boom justice wave, the court deemed the confession dubious from coercion. Edward was cleared of murder, but got 6 years for theft and assault. After 17 years inside, he walked free with $365,000. Stepping out at 54, thinning and worn, Edward waved cheering fans, his buck teeth gleaming in a smile. 17 years of torment. I'm glad the truth's out, he said. He aimed to tend his better-than-mom and regained strength. The press, Once his vilifiers apologized, he turned motivational speaker, a wronged hero, sharing his tale nationwide. Back in East Los Angeles, he took construction work, rented a small place near his mom and sister, and relished pork chops and ramen, now costlier than he recalled. Half his payout went to lawyers. His support group held most of the rest for his later years, leaving him $80,000 to burn. Old ways lingered. He blew cash in Santa Monica bars, once slurring, "I killed someone and got off." Drinkers shrugged it off as booze talk. A year later, he smashed a real estate office window, rifled for cash, and was jailed again for 2 years. Out! He snagged a janitor gig at Redwood Park. Then, in 1996, at 59, he hit the headlines again. Police moved cautiously, fearing backlash over his hero past and lacking airtight proof. Early DNA tech, still rough, offered a breakthrough. Disguised as sanitation crew, investigators trailed him, pulling DNA from his trash, bottles, chopsticks, tissues. It matched the parking lot blanket. As the case tightened, another crime hit. A 5-year-old girl was found unconscious in a Santa Monica park, barely alive, lured from Redwood Park by a middle-aged man on a bike. She'd been assaulted and choked. She survived, IDing Edward, as did her sister. He claimed he just meant to hush her cries, reviving her before bolting when help came. His messy apartment, littered with porn, books, videos, his saw and a buried head in the yard, its cuts matching Laura Mitchell's body. Her ID and parts were in his fridge. Slammed with evidence, Edward confessed. Months back, he met Laura, a drifter from Willow Bend, at Redwood Park. She moved in, diligent at first. He gave her keys and $30 daily for food. But she slacked, stayed out late, and bickered the night before the murder. She rolled in at 10:30 p.m., demanding $20,000 for her work. Furious, he bashed her dead with a bat. Later remorseful, he wrapped her in a blanket, burned her at the lot, and took her head home when it didn't fully char. In 1998, Edward faced trial in Los Angeles, charged with murder and more. The court called him volatile and remorseless, handing him life. His appeal flopped. The High Court cited his thrill-driven motive and grim post-killing acts. His hero mask crumbled, sparking public rage. His old allies turned laughingstocks. Without their fight for his acquittal, later horrors might have been dodged. The case posed tough questions. The media had rushed to tag him a killer, then a saint, blinding all to his threat. Many still peg him for the 1968 to 1974 spree, but pre-2010 laws capped prosecution at 25 years. By 1996, those cases were dead, even with fresh clues. Now 88, Edward festers in prison, denying the old killings. In letters to reporters, he penned soft words, "Stay well, keep at it," jarring against his savagery. His supporters, once duped by his plain charm, can't grasp the fiend beneath. Edward Hayes' tale isn't just a crook story. It's a warning on snap judgments, bias, media duty, and justice's cracks. It urges us to peel past surfaces, chase truth doggedly, and see the mess beneath. Truth's rarely neat, and this saga hammers home empathy and fairness for all. Only then can we forge a just world. That's the end, raw, dark, and final.